Hello, welcome to Animal Audit Corner. Today I'm bringing you a story about the mysterious mental illness of Quentin Hubbard. Quentin Hubbard was known for being the son of Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. Quentin was well known for committing suicide during his mental illness breakdown. He was rumored for being in the closet for years. And he was in Scientology with his dad, L. Ron Hubbard, where he thought he would take over someday. Even though all the rumors might have been true, he would die a tragic death. Quentin McCowell Hubbard was born on January 6, 1954, to Lafayette Ronald and Mary Sue Hubbard in Rockdale, Texas. He has 6 brothers and sisters named L. Ron Hubbard Jr., which later he changed to DeWolf. The last name DeWolf, on DeWolf. Catherine May K. Gillespie, and Diane Hubbard. And he had 3 other siblings. Quentin and his brothers and sisters grew up being abused by his father, who was into the black arts, which is a form of black magic in witchcraft. His father never gave Quentin or his brother and sisters the proper education that they needed at all. They had no prior education. Quentin and his brothers and sisters never had a great life. Some of them had a greater life at the end, even though they didn't have in their life while they were growing up. Quentin always been depressed, but didn't actually have signs of depression. He did actually have signs of depression that remained a mystery since that mystery illness did not pop up until the end. And also, Scientology is against psychiatry of any kind. But he might have been gay, and in 1970s, homosexuals are labeled mentally ill, but now it's not. In those books, they took it out of those books in, I think, 1986. Of course, I should have looked it up, but back in the 70s, they were labeled mentally ill. But it's no longer the case now. With gays and lesbians, it's considered feelings by nature, not mental illness. But since he tried to commit suicide not once but twice, Quentin's first attempt failed. But the fact that he was always depressed might have been mental illness, but no one knows that for sure. He was always mentally tormented, and the environment that he was in didn't help at all. What he was experiences was personal trauma. His father in the past said anyone can solve their own problems, and he thought that Dianetics will solve sexual perversion. He also thought Dianetics would cure anybody who is gay, which is an impossible thing to do. L. Ron Hubbard also thought Dianetics would cure any mental illness, that it can solve any mental health issue. And he wasn't even qualified to perform procedures like that. He didn't even have a medical license. He didn't even graduate college. He dropped out of school in the second semester. Then Quentin's problem got even more worse. He was put in a rehabilitation project force, which is a form of physical punishment which forces a person's confession right out of them with anything that he might have been doing wrong, which in this case, it was his homosexuality. But he does it with everybody else. And this man would actually throw a person overboard into the water while having his hands and feet tied up, and then pulled out of the water while close to death. And that was also their punishment. And that was his form of punishment. Then they would isolate a person from the outside world, then make them do hard manual labor. Then after he would put them through intense doctoral studies, that is a part of the leadership devotion. And that's what happened to Quentin. But it didn't even help Quentin. It would make him even more difficult. It would make it would make his case even more difficult to handle since he had no mental health treatment while he was in Scientology. Then on November 12th, 1976, Quentin Hubbard would take his own life the second time around by carbon dioxide poisoning. He would connect a garden hose through the tailpipe and put it into the car and then start the engine. It instantly killed him. Then at the end, the environment he was put in would eventually kill him. But the fact that he was always depressed might have been mental, but no one knows that for sure. Since Scientology is against mental health of any kind and was against psychiatry. And this is towards the end of his life. All because he was rumored for being in the closet for years. But at the same time, his dad was rumored to be bisexual. But I guess L. Ron was ignoring his own feelings. Nevertheless, his father never gave Quentin or his brothers and sisters the proper education that they needed. Each and every child in the state, in any of the United States, anywhere in this country, is supposed to be in school. And if the family doesn't have the money, it usually comes out of the public school system. Even the poor can go. Where overall his father said that perversion can solve, where overall his father in the past said that anyone can solve their own problems. And he thought that Dianetics can get rid of sexual perversion. No, it can't. It's really up to the person at the end whether he wants to be a pervert or not. Then all in all, Quentin's problem got even more worse. He was put in a rehabilitation project force while he was in Scientology. And in conclusion, after he would be put in the leadership design, which is an attempt to retrieve devotion. At the end, it was his father would stick him in Scientology so he would be so devoted to Scientology that it would make his father look good. But everyone should have figured out that this thing is not a religion. It was a business. But however, at the end, Quentin would pay the price for at the end when his father stuck him in a fake organization that that he would call a religion. And he stated at the end that if you want to make money, have your own religion, which, no, religion doesn't make people money at all. And that would be the story of L. Ron Hubbard, the late son of L. Ron Hubbard, while he was alive. Then, in 1986, L. Ron Hubbard passed away. Well, everybody, Father's Day is on its way. And if you're interested in participating in the protest on L. Ron Hubbard Drive, go right ahead. But also, if you're in another state and you can't afford it, they will air it on you right here on YouTube. But however, if you can afford to be there, then book your flight and gas up a tank and mark it on your calendar. Because guess what? Sunday will be Father's Day on May the 15th, 2025. And recently, another Scientology exited Scientology. Oh, a Scientologist exited Scientology, and that would be Joy Vila. And she's happily married with a man of her own. And of course, she would tell her story. Today, she told her story to Aaron Smith Levin. So hop on to Aaron's channel, and they'll both will give you the full details. Well, she would, but Aaron Smith Levin would interview her. And she was also on Natalie's show. And she experienced in first account of what went wrong while she was in Scientology. And her mental anguish when she exited, or while she was in Scientology, and then at the end, exited. So go on Aaron's channel and catch his whole interview with Joy Vila. And yesterday, the police commissioners meeting would take place. Of course, I wanted to speak out against the slave labor in Scientology, but you know what? Everybody was supposed to speak, but they said that the Zoom platform broke. Should we believe them since they're in the pocket of Scientology? And of course, as you know, according to Audit LA, Janet Whalen, who's in Scientology's OSA, is on the police advisory board, which is ridiculous. You don't put criminals on the board of the police commission's advisory. No way. And of course, no one on Zoom got a chance to talk. Now, they said there was something wrong with their Zoom meeting, but should we even believe them since they're in the pocket of Scientology? Well, I won't. Of course, there are good police officers, and some of them are in the LAPD, but half of them are in Scientology's pocket. And of course, as you recall, last year, Dan was arrested for giving his First Amendment right, and a police officer arrested him. Another police officer told him that he would see to it that the charges would be dropped. That's an example of a great police officer being fair and having the bias to figure it out. But with me, I do. My hearts are with the police officers all the way. I love them. But yes, there are occasions where there are some police officers that are not that great and commit crimes themselves. But overall, they're supposed to serve the best interests of the public. And Scientology, at the end, doesn't serve anybody's best interests. He should have arrested Osa and David Miscavige, along with Tom Cruise, since he's keeping slave labor. He is donating 1% of his income to Scientology, African humans for slave labor. That's where his 1% is going. And at the end, when a person wants to leave Scientology, they fair game him. And then if they have a pet, the pet would also pay the price with those poor things' own demise. Death, excuse me. And that is just so horrible. Now, me being an advocated animal lover, I think it's despicable that they're using animals to intimidate their victims. And why do they keep getting away with it? Oh, it's because they're in the back of the LAPD's pocket. They have fundraisers for them. They even go to the lawmakers also to get them to look the other way while they're committing all these crimes. the trafficking, the money laundering, and the way they're squeezing money out of all their members is disgusting. A regular church doesn't even do that. And the church that I go to, they don't squeeze money out of me. A real church would understand that the person who's there sometimes can't afford to give a donation. But does Scientology understand that? No. They just squeeze it right out of them. But you know what? There are corrupt organizations like that, the cult groups who are dangerous like that. And just recently, since there was the internet, Jehovah's Witnesses were outed. Their former members said they suffered abuse in the hands of Jehovah's Witnesses. Although they're not as well, it's bad being abused. But however, they're not as much of a threat as Scientology, even though they do abuse. It sounds like they do abuse people. But just think about it. They will operate to go to each and every house, which I buy. At first, in my younger years, I thought, oh, well, it's cool. They're talking about God, but there's more to it than that. God doesn't approve of abuse. Jesus does not approve of abuse. This earth does not approve of abuse, and neither does Gaia, the Mother Earth. But really, it's the people on Earth that do disgusting things like that. And excuse me, everybody. And it's the worst thing any human being can go through, being abused. So, well, that's all I can come up with today. So, hit that like button.